anticipation. To me, that's half the fun of whatever event there is. And this project's been on my radar for quite a while. I'm thinking of it as a countdown calendar, an advent calendar, but it could count down anything. And I also wanted a project that was pretty simple, so the piecing on this is simple enough for just about any beginning quilter. And the ScanNCut we're going to use today, we're just going to use the basic features of it too. So a couple very easy ways to get something that I think is pretty fun and useful. I'm Cathy, this is Sewing Tech Talk, and let's get to counting down. So I'm going to use the Baby Lock Altair today, and we're going to do some basic piecing. So we need a quilt to put our pockets on, right? Our pocket quilt. So let's do some basic piecing. I do want to use a feature of the machine. It has an LED guide light, and I find that super useful for piecing. Let me show you just briefly though. I wanted to kind of eliminate some cutting of squares. This quilt is actually charm square and jelly roll friendly. A jelly roll is those 2.5 inch by width of fabric strips, and charm squares are just 5-inch pre-cut squares. So you could use both of those for the front of the quilt. But I did cut some basic squares to make it pretty easy to make my pockets. So like I said, that could be a 5-inch square, and if you used 5-inch squares, you would just take one, and the second one you would fold in half diagonally, place on top of the first one, and just treat this as a single unit. You could glue it down, baste it down, something to keep it from moving. But I wanted a little bit less cutting. So what I did is I cut 5-inch by 10-inch squares, rectangles actually, of a lot of assorted fabrics. And if you can see the quilt, it is all different assorted fabrics. I had a jelly roll for all the different 2.5 inch. These are 2.5 by 5. These are 2.5 inch squares, and then this is a folded square to make that pocket. So how I folded this was, it's pretty simple. I just folded the 5 by 10 in half, gave it a little press. I would recommend pressing it with an iron, and then fold this upper left-hand corner down. And then you have your fun little pocket. Now, these are 5-inch squares. They could be any size squares that you want. And if you look at the quilt, well, I have a handout for you, and it has just the basic outline of this quilt. I made mine 6 by 6. But you can make the pockets any size that you wanted to, and you can make any number of pockets that you wanted. If you wanted, for example, a perpetual calendar, you'd probably make 6 rows of 7 or whatever you want to for your particular project that works. And of course, like I said, the squares could be any size. And it's going to go together pretty simple. So let's fire up the Altair, and I'm going to use the basic piecing stitch. This is built into the machine. I'm also going to be using the Ultra T feet because it has a 1/4 inch foot that works really great. I have a couple layers here, and I don't want it to scoot, so I am using this. Well, I use these feet for everything now because they just work great. So let me get the machine set up. Let's open up that piecing stitch. So when I go into sewing, the piecing stitch, there's several of them. They're designated by a P. The one using the center needle position is right there. And you can see that it changes the length of the stitch, and it shows it right in the middle. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the LED guide light, because this foot has a guide to help me sew, but I like a little bit longer one to get everything in place. So I'm going to engage the LED guide light, and what you see is what you get on the screen. So I'm going to scoot it over, and I could literally measure exactly a 1/4 inch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the visual of the foot. So let me put a little piece of fabric under there so that you can see that guide light. Let me get some of this out of the way. So you can see that guide light very clearly. And I'm going to move it so it's just to the right of this part of the foot, which is where my 1/4 inch is going to be. So I can see now it's right off to the edge. Now what I recommend is, I have vision issues, so for me, I see things just a little bit differently. Take 2 squares, cut a couple of the 2.5 inch squares, sew them together, open it up and measure it and see if you do have a true 1/4 inch seam. I did do a video previously called Quilter's Dream of a 1/4 inch seam, and where I use this machine, and there's lots of ways to adjust this to get your perfect 1/4 inch. On this quilt, quite frankly, it's not that big of a deal, but on some quilts it is. So you might as well do it right from the get-go, right? Okay, so now let's sew together just a simple block to show you how simple this is. So once you get your squares together, you're going to need, let me get this up here so that you can see. What I did is I made a row, and it tells you about all of this in the handout. A row of a square and a sashing strip and a square and a sashing strip. Made a whole row of that, and then a whole row of the sashing strip laying down flat, and then the cornerstone as well. So when you sew all those together, you can just sew your rows together, try to match your corners. The one thing on this is you're going to try to catch this fold and this fold. That's why I really recommend pressing it really well so it sticks. So let's just sew this together. Let me get this to the side so that you can see. And I'm going to use some red thread so that you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So here's my 2 little squares. I'm going to lay them right sides together. And I'm going to place them right underneath the foot. I have automatic down on my machine, and I do have an automatic reinforcement key if I need to do that. I'm just going to get it so it's catching the fabric. Now the Altair also comes with a single needle hole plate, which is super great for doing piecing. If these were triangles, that would keep the triangle tips from going down into the machine, and I could use it with the exact setup that I have. So it does come with a single needle hole plate, if that works for you. So I hope you can see what I have is I have the foot on the machine. The raw edge of the fabric is right next to that, and I do have my guide light extending way out from the foot, so I know I'm doing a good 1/4 inch seam. You gotta plug in the presser foot. Well, it's good to know you can sew without it too. If I hadn't plugged it in, I could have just used the stop-start button. Now let's sew with the presser foot down and the foot control. So now I came, and I hope you can see when I stopped, the needle stayed in, but the foot lifted up. That's another feature on the Altair called pivot. So on the screen of the machine, you can see that I have this button engaged with the needle and the foot. What happens is when you take your foot off the foot control and the foot control is plugged in, the needle's going to stay down and the foot's going to lift up. I find that super helpful for doing any kind of string piecing that I need to do when I'm piecing one piece after the other. So let me take my other piece. We'll get it all put together here. I'm going to put right sides together. Align all those raw edges. Now on this quilt I have the little pockets, and all my pockets are going the same way. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I did, and I like the look of the quilt. If you are doing that, do make sure you're keeping the orientation of the quilt the same for what you want to end up with. So now if I put that under there, I can line everything up, and as I sew, that foot's going to automatically come down and help me do that 1/4 inch. Now when I come to the end, I have scissors automatically on the machine. It's going to clip that thread, and I hope you can see that all of my edges came all right together. That fold, all of those layers of the fabric just sewed beautifully with that high performance foot. Here's the back of it. And as I got a nice 1/4 inch, and everything's good to go. Like I said, I did strips on my quilt, but you could put together a block like this any way that you want to do it. This is a great quilt for a new quilter, a beginning quilter. Say you don't do a lot of sewing and you're just getting into it. Great way to learn how to do some quilting. Now there's one other thing I want to show you. I do have the quilt all quilted, but I quilted it in the ditch around all the sashing and all the squares. But I did also quilt, and I'll show you. I did also quilt diagonally through the patches, and I pulled this folded edge out of the way because I wanted it to be super sturdy, because I might put some little toys in there or some little gifts. I used my guide light for that feature as well. So let me just show you that on the patch that I just made. So here is my square. And I changed over to the digital dual feed that comes with the Altair, but I'm just going to show you with this 1/4 inch foot. You can see I have that guide light, and I've moved it over for my 1/4 inch. But let's use this to show where we're going to sew. So on the screen, I'm going to move it back to show me exactly where that needle's going to be going across. Because remember, I want this to be a fast, quick, and easy quilt. And when I have everything put together, I don't want to mark exactly where this line's going to be. So when I was sewing this together, what I used is, let me lower this so that you can see, whoops. I used this, I pulled this edge out of the way, and I used this guide light and I lined it up to the opposite edge. And I got to do some perfect diagonal quilting without having to mark the quilt. The guide light showed me how. So let me show you how that would work just on this patch. There it is. I pulled that together. Remember, the quilt's all sewn together and you're just quilting it. So let me get over here where I would be, and I've just lined up this LED guide light with this opposite corner. Like I said, I did use my digital dual feed because for quilting it's great. Everything comes through. But let me show you that diagonal line. Look at how perfect and pretty that is. So you can see on my quilt, well, I did that diagonal quilting and I didn't really have to mark it. I sewed in the ditch, I sewed those diagonal lines just going across the quilt. Now you can only do one direction. You can't go that direction because you'd be sewing your pocket closed. But you can see with the guide light, it goes fast and easy. Now speaking of fast and easy, I'm really enjoying playing with the ScanNCut. I made some little cards and I cut them and cut out the numbers. You can write them, oh, all kinds of fun stuff. There's so many possibilities. So go ahead and sew your pocket quilt together, but let's go over to the ScanNCut and we'll do some basic paper cutting because, oh my gosh, it just makes this project special. So I cut and I pulled off the outer layer and look how precisely everything got cut. Pretty cool, right? Now let's draw something and just say a message on one of our cards. Now we can truly do that with a pen, but oh my gosh, it's so much more precise when the machine does it. So the machine has built-in fonts. So I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to pick just a font. That's a good one right there. And let's just put in maybe, I don't know, trim the tree. So T, lowercase R-I-M space the tree. Perfect. Now we have to make it the right size. So we're going to say OK. Now it's a little long, so let's make it smaller. 4 inches a little too big. And I made it about 3 inches, a little bit smaller. There, that's good. And I'm going to hit set. Now, I did scan my mat, and it's pretty easy to do. Let me just show you how to do that again. So all I need to do is I can hit the scan button down there, and the machine is going to scan what's ever on the mat. Now, what is the advantage to you? Oh, say I wanted to make a whole bunch of fun cards. I have last year's holiday cards, or I want to make a set of old maid matching cards to do a matching game on my thing. Or I want to make a set of flashcards, or whatever you want to do. I can do all of that, but I just want to scan what's on here so I know exactly where my parts and pieces are. So I'm going to hit start, and it's just going to scan the mat. Now this could also be fabric, and I could fussy cut the areas that I need to fussy cut, or it could be any kind of special cardstock that's printed with some pretty design on it. All kinds of options. So now here are there's the exactly where the pieces are on the mat. Now I'm just going to move my trim the tree over to this little square over here. So I'm going to select it and move it over. So it's right down there on the bottom. Now, I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to draw it. And the ScanNCut comes with a pin holder and not only an air erasable, but a water erasable. That's not going to work for my project here. But you use these if you're doing quilting to mark the seam lines. You can get an optional set of felt tip pins, or you could get a universal pin holder that holds just about whatever pin you want to buy, and you have all choices for that. So let's just change it out. We're going to take out this blade because we're not going to cut, and the pin has been put inside of the little pin holder. Put that in, lock it on down. Now I want to write this out, so I'm just going to say okay. Now remember, we selected cut before. This time, we're just going to say draw. Great. And now I can test, but I'm just going to hit start. That is so pretty. I hope you can see I have my little card with the number 3 and trim the tree. Let's see what it looks like in the quilt. Perfect. There's so many options. There's so many things you can do with this little simple project. I list a whole bunch of them in the handout. Instructions for the pocket quilt, basics instructions for doing this, and lots of fun to be had. So thank you for watching me today. I hope you get a little inspired, because the ScanNCut and your sewing machine, actually they're kind of a perfect match. I'm going to send it off to George. Thanks for watching me, and have a great day wherever your day is.
Thanks, Kathy. That was, as always, an incredible presentation. The ScanNCut to me is an essential part of your sewing room. It's a tool that will aid in everything from applique to quilting, also for crafting. But what I love about the Brothers ScanNCut is it also reads the embroidery format, the PES, which is the most common. And so you can turn an embroidery applique into something that you don't even have to cut. So as Kathy showed, it cuts the applique piece out for you, and that's quite amazing. But you also can turn the embroidery into embellishment, embossing. You can draw with it, as well as cut the fabric. So there's so much you can do with it. Now, the ScanNCut also is self-contained. It has a high resolution scanner, so you can scan an image and turn it into cut data, which is unlike any other product out there that's similar. It also has over 1,300 built-in patterns of all different sorts, even quilt patterns that are quite amazing. Now, cutters can be very complicated to adjust the depth of the blade. Well, this has a special auto blade that can cut up to 3 millimeters thick, even balsa wood and vinyl and foam, but also down to fabric. Even with the auto fabric blade, it will cut fabric without any sizing on it, so you can truly use it for your quilt blocks. Now, the ScanNCut model SDX325 is the model that Kathy showed, and we have that on sale. It has a regular retail price of $999, and it's on sale for $699, and we're including free shipping across the country. So click on the link to order, or give us a call at 1-800-865-9664. The Baby Lock Altair is dollar for dollar the most advanced machine in the industry. It has a large 9.5 by 14 inch embroidery area, plus 494 built-in beautiful designs, 30 of the most amazing fonts that you can arc and ray and edit, plus many large beautiful monograms. You have the ability to create a design without a computer. With the IQ Designer, you can take an image from a phone, send it to a machine, and it turns into beautiful embroidery instantly. You also have an automatic applique creator to create great borders around names and other embroidery designs. Plus, of course, we love our never miss needle threader, and it also cuts all the jump stitches that you want. Now, it's not just for embroidery. This is an incredible machine with 11.25 inch opening. It also has a automatic fabric sensor. This fabric sensor senses heavy fabric like denim and sews automatically from there. It will also sew on lighter fabric like tricot. It will sew elastic. It's incredible. Now, for the real difficult fabric and for quilting, it has a digital dual feed with a belt system that controls all fabrics perfectly. It also has a laser guide, so you can guide it for that perfect seam allowance. It's incredible. As I mentioned, this is dollar for dollar the most advanced machine in the industry. We have a special package right now. The total package value is $14,999, but we have it on sale for $8,999. We're offering free shipping across the country, as well as we have interest-free payments of under $188 a month. But that's not all. We have a special bonus for a limited time, and while supplies last, we're including 63 spools of beautiful embroidery thread, 2 separate design collections by Anita Good Design, which has over 600 design files in all different styles. We're including stabilizer, all kinds of needles, bobbins, and a membership to Love of Knowledge. We're here, you're going to see all kinds of demonstrations and techniques on the Baby Lock Altair and other sewing techniques. This is for a limited time, but I also mentioned we have interest-free payments. Now, for those who don't want to finance, we have even a better bonus. So give us a call at 1-800-865-9664 or click on the link to order today. Bye for now.